In this video, I'm going to show you how to draw 3D letters using an isometric grid. The benefit of this grid is it allows us to draw three-dimensional objects without having to understand perspective. The grid itself is made up of equilateral triangles. All sides are equal, which means that the distances along x, y, and z axis are all equal. Each side is about 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeters long. To make a grid like this, you would draw parallel vertical lines that are 1/8 of an inch apart. Then you would draw parallel lines at 60-degree angle. Then you would rotate them by 60 degrees in the other direction, creating little triangles as they intersect. These triangles form the basis of our grid. With this style, the letters could be facing left or right or top left, top right. I'm going to cover the left-facing orientation. Most of your letters are going to fit inside of a 10 by 8 by 2 box. And for any letters that have different dimensions, I will specifically call them out. Let's start with the I. It has the height of 10, just like all the other letters, but it is only 2 units wide. The I is a core element of the alphabet, as it is repeated in many other letters, such as the H. Next, I'm going to show you how to build the H. Let's start with our 10 by 8 by 2 box and then place the letter inside of it. The easiest way to think about it is to first draw the letter on the left face of the box and then fill in the rest. With our 10 by 8 rectangle, the stems of the H are going to be 2 units wide, and the crossbar is going to be centered vertically. Once we have the face of the letter, we can go ahead and add volume to it. The next letter we're going to draw is the T. Just like the H, it fits inside of the 10 by 8 box. Now let's take a look at the E. With the E, something interesting is going to happen. If we keep the width at 8 units, it's going to look disproportionately wide, so we're going to make it only 6 units wide. And every stroke in this letter is going to be 2 units wide. Now let's do the L. Just like the E, it needs to be a little narrower at just 6 units wide. The next letter we're going to cover is the F. In the F, there's going to be a small interesting difference. The second crossbar is going to be a little bit shorter than the 6 units. It's going to be 5 instead. You could make it the same length as the top one, but I think it looks more balanced when the second crossbar is just a tiny bit shorter. Now let's take a look at some rounded letters. The first one I'd like to show you is the letter U. We're going to start out by drawing a very square U and then adding the curves to it. Depending on how sharp the corner is, the curve will either cut off one square, just like on these wide corners, or 2 squares on the sharp ones. Next, let's take a look at the D. Once again, we're going to start with a rectangular box and add the curves later. Note that the starting box is going to look the same for the D, the O, and the Q. The next letter is the O. Once again, if we have a sharp corner, we cut off 2 square units. And if we have a wide one, we only cut off 1 square unit. The Q is the same as the O, except it has a funky little tail on the right. Now let's take a look at the C and the G. Since they have an open counter, they will need to be a little narrower than the closed letters like O, D, and Q. So they will be just 7 units wide instead of 8. What other fun letters are there? Let's do the letter S next. It is also going to be only 7 units wide. As before, we're going to start with a square shape and then add the curves later. Now let's do a P. The bowl of the P is going to be 6 units wide. and the counter is going to be 2 by 2 units. Let's take a look at the B. It is going to be a little more tricky. This letter will be 6 units wide for both the top and the bottom bowls. We will start with the 2 counters, each 2 by 2. The top bowl is usually a little smaller than the bottom one. Here, we're going to achieve this effect by moving the point where the curves meet up by 1 unit so that it lines up with the bottom of the top bowl. Next, we will do the R. Its bowl is going to be 6 units wide, but the bottom of the letter is going to be 8 units wide. Just like with the B, I'm going to start with a counter. The tail of the R is a diagonal, and to make it look like it has the same weight as the rest of the letter, we'll have to do a little trick. Instead of making it 2 units wide, like the vertical stems, we will make it 3 units wide. This may seem counterintuitive, but otherwise it would look too thin and weak. The sides of each stroke are always parallel, so I'm going to use a ruler to make sure the intersection of the bowl and the tail is in the right place. The next tricky letter is the N. I'm actually going to show you 2 different angles of it to illustrate the difficulty with the diagonals. the n is 8 units wide. In this version, the diagonal is going to be 3 units thick, just like the tail of the R. Now let's take a look at what happens when the letter faces the other way. As crazy as it sounds, the diagonal needs to be 4 units thick to have similar weight to the vertical stems. This style of letters is all about optical illusions, and diagonals are certainly the most difficult part of them. Let's take a little break from the diagonals and do a J. Now we're going to come back to the letters that have diagonals in them. Next up is K. The top of the K is 6 units wide. And the bottom is 7 units wide. The tail is 3 units wide, just like the tail of the R. The next letter is a W. It is 13 units wide on the top. The bottom is 8 units wide, and you have to watch how they're aligned. This letter has nothing but diagonals, so I will use a ruler to make sure they're all correct. When you have an intersection of two diagonal strokes, these are the points that you connect. Next on our list is the X. It is going to be 8 units wide. One of the diagonals is going to be 3 units wide, while the other one is only 2 units wide. Next, the Y, also 8 units wide. The top of the Y is going to be the same as the top of the X. and the stem is going to come up 5 units high. And finally, the Z is 7 units wide. With the X, Y, and Z, I thought I was done, but then I realized that I forgot a few more letters. So let's do letter A next. The crossbar is 3 units above the baseline. The next letter is the M. It is 10 units wide on top. and 12 units on the bottom. The diagonals are built the same way as the diagonals in the W. And finally, the V. Just like the A, it's going to be 8 units wide. Now I think I got them all. Thanks for watching and have fun with these letters.